Welcome to the Explainer. Have you ever poured yourself a glass of sparkling wine, watched those tiny mesmerizing bubbles rushing to the surface, and just thought, how exactly do they get in there? Well, today we're going on a totally fascinating journey. We're going from the sun-drenched vineyards straight to your chilled glass to demystify the science of sparkling wine. We're going to lay out the exact blueprint of those bubbles, unlocking the agricultural secrets, the regional mastery, and of course, the rigorous chemistry that goes into every single pop of the cork.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our structural roadmap for the Explainer today. First up, we'll meet the international grapes. Second, we're looking at world-famous sparkling wines. Third, we're diving into the science of maturation. And finally, number 4, the art of the harvest. Think of this as your behind-the-scenes blueprint of the whole winemaking process. Let's get going.
All right, part 1, meet the international grapes. Because before we even think about stepping into the cellar or the lab, we've got to start right down in the dirt. The real magic of those bubbles begins right here with the raw agricultural materials.
Let's look at the foundational trio grown pretty much everywhere. Imagine taking a sip and immediately getting hit with the mouth-watering aromas of Chardonnay. Originally from Burgundy, France, it brings this bright green apple and lemon vibe, and if it's aged, you get these deep, luxurious vanilla, honey, and butter notes. Then there's Pinot Noir, also hailing from Burgundy. Now, even though it's a red grape with bluish-black skin, its pulp is totally pigment-free, which is absolutely essential for sparkling wine. It gives us elegant red and black fruit flavors layered with earthy spices. Think cinnamon and pepper. And finally, Riesling. Native to Germany's Rhine region, it delivers incredibly fresh floral notes like anise and white flowers, all underpinned by this distinct mineral quality. It perfectly reflects its terroir, right? The unique soil and environment where it actually grew.
And this brilliantly illustrates that beyond those global superstars, we've got some vital grapes thriving in very specific geographic strongholds. Take Chenin Blanc from the Loire Valley in France. With about 36,000 hectares planted globally, it gives us these absolutely gorgeous stone fruit and citrus flavors. Contrast that with Macabeo, or Viura, which is native to Spain's La Rioja region. We're talking a massive 57,000 hectares planted solely in Spain, packing high acidity and really fresh anise aromas. And lastly, the highly specialized Paralotta grape. Native to Catalonia, it covers just 9,500 hectares. These super distinct, specific traits, they are literally the building blocks that contribute directly to the world's greatest regional wines.
Which brings us perfectly to part 2, world-famous sparkling wines. Now that we've got a handle on the raw ingredients, let's see how different regions transform them into the world-renowned masterpieces we all know and love.
When we talk about world-famous bubbles, the absolute most iconic comparison has to be Champagne versus Prosecco. Champagne from France is incredibly traditional. It relies on specific prestigious vineyard plots known as crus, like Grand Cru or Premier Cru. It primarily blends Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. And here's the kicker, it gains its legendary complexity from aging right inside the bottle. Now, Prosecco, originating from the Veneto region in Italy, takes a totally different path. Utilizing the Glera grape, Prosecco actually undergoes its second fermentation in massive stainless steel tanks. This creates a fundamentally different profile. It's a much fresher, incredibly vibrant effervescence loaded with apple, pear, and peach flavors.
Meanwhile, over in Spain's Pinedes region, we find Cava. And Cava relies on a perfectly balanced classic blend. It takes that Macabeo grape we discussed just a minute ago for sharp acidity and citrus, combines it with Xarel-Lello to provide some really robust body and structure, and then rounds the whole thing out with Paralotta for delicate freshness and floral notes. By perfectly balancing these three, winemakers create the totally unique character of Cava. And from there, it's actually classified by its residual sugar content, ranging all the way from a bone-dry brute nature to a super sweet dulce.
But hey, Italy definitely isn't a one-trick pony with just Prosecco. Consider Franciacorta from the Lombardy region. This one undergoes rigorous DOCG certification, literally the highest level of Italian wine classification. They use Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Blanc to create a ridiculously elegant, structured wine. And then there's Lambrusco from Emilia-Romagna. Lambrusco actually relies on a whole family of native grapes and varies wildly when it comes to the bubbles. It can be frizzante, meaning slightly sparkling with a soft, gentle fizz, or spumante, meaning fully sparkling and really pronounced. Just completely different experiences.
Moving on to part 3, the science of maturation. We are now officially shifting our narrative from the romantic, dimly lit cellar to the highly precise, brightly lit laboratory. because making sparkling wine requires some seriously rigorous analytical chemistry to control the quality.
So, let's look at a critical metric, the Brix degree. This is actually measured out in the field using a tiny optical instrument called a refractometer. By just placing a single drop of grape must on a prism and looking at it under the sunlight, winemakers can measure the exact sugar content based on how light bends through the juice. Now, why this matters is simple but absolutely crucial. Brix isn't just some dry scientific number on a clipboard. The sugar in that grape is exactly what the yeast will eventually consume during fermentation. So Brix is the crucial predictor of the probable alcohol content that's actually going to end up in your glass.
Next up, we have total acidity. Back in the lab, winemakers carefully measure this by essentially neutralizing the wine to a pH of exactly 7.00. This lets them calculate the exact sum of all its measurable acids. I know it sounds super technical, but this is the metric that guarantees the refreshing, balanced structure of the final product. Without precise acidity, a sparkling wine would just taste flat, flabby, and honestly, completely uninteresting.
As fermentation starts to wrap up, winemakers have to determine the exact concentration of residual sugars to classify the wine. Remember those classifications we talked about earlier? Well, this is typically done using something called the ripening method. It's a pretty intricate process to dial in that exact sugar number. But here's the catch. This complex chemical test only actually works if the wine's reducing sugar content is strictly below a threshold of 28 grams per liter. Anything over that, and the method just doesn't work.
Now, what's really interesting about this step is how winemakers protect all this incredible hard work. They have to measure sulfur dioxide, or SO2, using the double ripper method. It involves 3 specific steps: an initial iodine titration to find total SO2, a second titration to bypass any errors from aldehydes, and then a third titration to correct for polyphenol consumption. Now, why go through all this crazy trouble? Because SO2 acts as an invisible vital shield. It has powerful antiseptic properties that literally protect the fragile wine from spoiling due to unwanted yeasts and harmful bacteria.
Before we leave the lab entirely, it's definitely worth highlighting an emerging trend in the chemistry of sparkling wine, the 5.5 category. So while your traditional sparkling wines usually hover around 11 to 12% alcohol, this brand new global category is precisely calibrated to an alcohol content of just 5.5% by volume. The result? A sweeter, lighter, frizzante beverage with a bit more acidity that is absolutely finding a massive audience worldwide right now.
All right, part 4, the art of the harvest. Let's ground ourselves back in the dirt and sweat of the vineyard to explore the physical culmination of this entire winemaking cycle. Let's see how this builds, because when it comes to the harvest, timing is literally everything. Winemakers utilize this meticulous, days-long countdown to hit the absolute optimal starting date. They don't just guess out there. They count roughly 100 days from the moment of flowering until ripening. Or, alternatively, they wait for effervescent, which is that beautiful moment when the grapes change color, and count exactly 45 to 52 days to ripening. This strict timeline ensures the grapes hit the crush pad at the very peak of their potential. And when that big day finally arrives, a major choice has to be made: manual or mechanized harvest. Manual harvesting is this elegant, super careful selection process. It keeps the grape bunches perfectly intact, completely avoiding any premature juice loss. But, as you can imagine, it is notoriously slow, very costly, and you're totally at the mercy of bad weather. Contrast that with the brutal, fast efficiency of machines. Self-propelled harvesters are highly economical, and they can work through the night to beat the daytime heat, which is a massive advantage. But mechanized harvesting requires elevated trellises and carries some serious risks. The bunches get crushed, the juice mixes with the skins, and premature fermentation can actually trigger before the grapes even reach the winery. No way you want that.
So the crucial point here is that sparkling wine isn't just a drink, it's a really intricate dance. It goes from the specific terroir that gives a Riesling its mineral snap, to the strict Brix degree measurements predicting the alcohol, all the way to the midnight roar of a mechanical harvester saving a whole crop from the heat. It is a deeply satisfying full-circle journey where raw nature and rigorous science perfectly blend together. So I'll leave you with this. The next time you pop a cork and pour yourself a glass, will you taste the terroir or the chemistry?